Hello, welcome to the Dream Stories channel. We are glad to see you on our next shocking story. Enjoy watching. Fader had been hitting the punching bag in the gym at the Ministry of Internal Affairs for 2 hours, putting all his anger into every punch. Take that, here's more. Didn't you want to do that? He whispered curses to his imaginary opponent. His friend, the young operative Oleg, called out to his comrade. Come on, Fedya, are you out of your mind? Your fists are already smashed. You haven't been yourself lately, beating a peer till you're green, or shouting at everyone who comes near. What is the matter with you? The man was perplexed. The guy came to his senses, wiped sweat from his forehead, and quietly said, Yes, I am sick, Oleg, I have no strength. With Rika recently divorced, and she took her daughter Dasha, and in any way does not allow us to communicate. Fedya said in the heart. Wow, what are you up to? You loved her so much, you dusted her off. My partner was amazed. Yeah, I dusted her off and she gave me horns. Forget them. Fader shook his hand and went to the locker room. He sat down on the bench and began to think, remembering the sad events of the recent past. Fedya grew up in a village, his mother worked as a milkmaid on a farm, and his father was a local district officer. It was he who instilled in his son the love of this profession. He always lived according to his conscience, worked according to justice, and looked into every fate before punishing or pardoning. That is why the boy did not think of himself as someone else. He graduated from police school and also went to the precinct police in the city. He loved his job, despite the fact that he had to deal with convicts and alcoholics, and he was on his feet all day, and the pay was not all right. It was unlikely that they would ever have met Rita in normal life. She was a fashionable and beautiful bimbo with a higher education, worked as a translator for a prestigious firm. She had a mean temper, she knew her worth, and she was very jealous and arrogant. But at the same time very beautiful, you couldn't take your eyes off of her. It so happened that she was working with a client and her expensive purse was stolen right in the street with her money, cards and phone. Fedya helped her find it safely, and that's how we met. Fedya was blown away by her beauty and fell deadly in love with her. A perfect figure, a long ponytail, perfect manicure in business, tight-fitting suit gave her a special charm. Rita, on the other hand, accepted the advances coldly and reserved. For her, he was just one of her many admirers. The romance was short-lived. Nave Village, simple idealist quickly bored Margarita, and she was about to leave him. But then she found out that she was pregnant. The girl was angry at herself for her indiscretion. A child was not in her plans, but she did not have an abortion nevertheless. They decided to have a wedding. Fedya wanted to celebrate it modestly, in a cafe, to invite his parents and closest people. Why all the pompous showing? But the bride just freaked out. I'm getting married 10 times? All should be at the level. A dress from the salon, not this gaudy rental limousine and fancy restaurant. You do what you want, groom. If you can't afford it, borrow it. The guy got into huge debts, took out a loan, but fulfilled all the whims of his beloved, not noticing the consumerist and neglectful attitude towards himself. He hoped that the baby would be born, and his wife would settle down, and everything would be fine with them. Fedya was over the moon when Daria was born. He changed diapers and cradled the baby at night until morning, despite the fact that he had to work early in the morning. He stroked and kissed her chubby pink and such dear cheeks, smelling of milk. Margarita, on the contrary, became more and more angry and irritated. The baby frankly pissed her off. She was very worried that the figure would float and spoil. Fussing with the baby did not please her at all. Dashka in her arms screamed endlessly, while her husband immediately sniffled and fell asleep. Scandals in the family were commonplace. The wife yelled at Fedya on any occasion or without it, reproaching him for all mortal sins. When will we start to live like people? I want to go to work. Let's hire a nanny. You can't get away on your poor little handout. You can't get anything done, you wimp. What was I looking at? The woman nagged. Fedya was genuinely perplexed. Ritaka, well, what nanny? How can you trust your own blood to someone else's aunt? Why don't you go to my place in the country for the summer? Why, there's fresh air and fresh milk. It would be good for the baby, he suggested. Are you out of your mind? You know, normal husbands send their wives to resorts, and this idiot makes them smell of dung. If I find myself a rich lover, you'll know." She was screaming like a madwoman. Rita began to walk around almost openly. Expensive cars drove her to the house, expensive clothes and earrings appeared, and she threw her little daughter on her girlfriends and then on Fedia. When he could not stand it and threatened her divorce, she suddenly snapped, "Yes, I myself am leaving you tomorrow, and you never see Dasha again. You're nothing to her. I'm the one who got her pregnant, got it? Loser. My Maratic is very cool, so don't even pry into my life. Bye." And the self-satisfied woman began to pack her things in a rage. Fedia stepped over his pride, begged, pleaded. In spite of everything, he loved Rita very much and could not imagine life without his daughter. But all in vain, his wife's cold, calculating heart did not budge, and they divorced. No matter how many times the guy fought, he could not prove anything. Rita provided false testimony that Dasha was not his, and he was deprived of his rights to his daughter. The woman herself did not know why she was doing this. The child only stressed her out. She just wanted to mess with her ex. The policeman became embittered. Neither alcohol nor grueling classes in the gym to the sweat did not help. There was a huge hole of pain and resentment gaped in her soul. He did not even look at women. He was too busy working. Once he got into a fight with some criminals and was badly hurt, ending up in the hospital with fractures and a head concussion. All the time Fedia was in the trauma ward. One nurse, Anyuta, took care of him selflessly. She carried pies and apples, ran into his room many times during her shift, blushing and embarrassed. He knew the girl was not indifferent. Fedia, however, no matter how much he looked at the nurse, saw nothing special in her. Ordinary commoner, overweight and a little clumsy, with red bumps and an open, sincere smile. In a word, a village. Compared to Rita, Anya was only a pale shadow of her. But a new patient fell in Anyuta's heart at once. Tall, muscular, with a strong chin and thick, black hair, he was polite, well-read, not the same dumb, obtrusive orderlies who hit on the girl with unambiguous proposals. Gradually, the young people became closer. They went to the park, to concerts, to the movies, and just for a walk. Fedia decided to show Anyuta to his mother, who was very nervous about her son's divorce and wished she had met a nice girl. The couple went to the countryside for the weekend. Fyodor's parents were absolutely fascinated by Anyuta. She was sociable, open, deftly cooked pies with her mother, and could easily milk a cow. After drinking heavily, the father took his son aside and said quietly, "I'll tell you this, Fyodor, a bride, fire, marry, you won't regret it. You can see that she's a good girl, and she loves you a lot, and cares for you. Dad, I don't love her, and she can't have children, she told me straight away. I can't do it yet. Maybe later," the boy muttered under his breath. "You fool, Sonny, you don't know anything about people. You're only messing with the girl's head." His father waved in anger. Fyodor and Anyuta lived like that. They did not quarrel. She loved him and took care of him like a child. Always ironed uniform, fresh dinner, clean apartment. Often, especially in the evenings, she would snuggle up to him, faithfully look into his eyes, and ask hopefully, "Fyodor, do you love me?" And she hugged him tightly. And he, in order not to offend the girl, always answered something like "uh-huh" or "yes," and never once confessed his love for her. The girl, of course, understood everything. He told her everything honestly about his ex-wife, whom he loved madly, about his daughter, but she calmed herself down. Better this than without him. She could not imagine life without her Fedia and was ready to do anything for him. One day Fedia was with Oleg in the police department on duty. When the phone rang, on the other end of the line a child's voice babbled. "Help me. My stepfather is misbehaving. Come quickly. He attacked me and my mom. I'm very afraid." And they hung up. There were no more calls and the child did not give any address or coordinates, so everyone calmed down and thought it was a stupid prank. Kids often fool around in this way. But Feder took the phone call very seriously. The child's voice was very excited. You could feel that the child really panicked. He asked to find out where the call came from. It was a prestigious neighborhood where rich and respectable businessmen lived. And not knowing why, Fedia took a cab and rushed there. He knew his stubborn nature. He could not sleep if he did not find out the truth. When he reached the right mansion, he tried to look out the window. The light was burning everywhere in the house, The shouts of an enraged man and the strangled groans of a woman could be heard. "I'm going to kill you, right here," yelled the troublemaker. The policeman realized it was serious, called for backup, and climbed onto the first-floor balcony, breaking a window with a cobblestone. The policeman broke into the room and started dragging the crazy, drunken, huge man away. A fight ensued, and the guy barely managed to ring the giant around. An ambulance arrived, and the woman was taken to the hospital with serious injuries to her face and hands. But where was the baby? Fader began to call out, "I won't hurt you, I'm a policeman, Bunny. Come out, don't be afraid." He mouthed affectionately, realizing that the baby was hiding somewhere. The door of the closet opened, and he saw a scared-to-death girl of 5. She sobbed softly and covered her face with his hands. He carefully pulled the little girl out of the closet, took her in his arms, and began to stroke her head and soothe her. We heard from the neighbors that a tough businessman lived in the house with his mistress and her daughter. They did not know what happened this time and why he attacked his cohabitant, but they often heard yelling and cursing in the evenings. It was not clear what to do with the child until her mother recovered, and Fedia volunteered to take the girl in. He felt madly sorry for the little girl. He loved children very much in general. She reminded him of his own daughter. The girl's name was also Dasha. Arriving home with a child, he, out of breath, began to tell Anya what happened. Then he asked, "You do not mind that the little girl lived with us for a while her mother in the hospital?" Anya brightened up. "I'll be glad to. Children are very fond of, do not worry, we'll get along." And she carried Dasha bathed and fed. Anya quickly found an approach to the child. The girl calmed down and would not leave her arms. The next day, Fader learned in which hospital that injured woman had been taken, and decided to check on her. He quietly entered the room. The patient was lying with her eyes closed, her face bandaged. The guy even recoiled, so awful was the sight. The patient barely opened her swollen eyes and stared at him intently for a long time, then said in a quiet, hoarse voice, "Thank you, Fedor, you saved me." The policeman asked in bewilderment, "Woman, do I know you?" The patient took a deep breath. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm Rita, your ex-wife, don't you recognize me?" "Well, that's understandable. My mother would not recognize me now." From the shock, the guy's jaw almost fell off. "It's his Margarita. It cannot be." It turned out that calculating and greedy for money, Rita abandoned her career and changed lovers, one after another, and lived like that. And the last Arsene did not tolerate in the house of another man's child, which irritated him terribly, and his mistress, who was not enough money, and she demanded more and more. When he suspected her of cheating, he threw his fists in her face. If the little girl had not called the police, and not our hero, then most likely a terrible thing would have happened in this house. Oriental blood is hot. Finished, Rita added, "You don't judge me, forgive me if you can. You know, Fedia, how many times I regretted that I left you, because no one has loved me so much all these years. And Dasha, she's your daughter. I lied out of spite to hurt you. Maybe we should try again, like before?" You, me and Dasha sang the Sly Foxes song. Feeder jumped out of the room without answering. He wandered the streets until dark. He thought he had forgotten or fallen out of love. But when he saw her, he felt a surge of passion. Love and hate mingled together again. What to do next? He did not know. And what about Anya? After all, she is not guilty of anything and sincerely loves him. The man spent 3 weeks visiting Rita in the hospital, and he did not dare to tell Anna about everything. Exhausted all, in the end he could not stand it, and blurted out everything to her heart. He expected anything, tears, hysteria, scandal, but the girl just said quietly, "Fedia, I understand everything, it's your daughter, you love her, you have a family, and for me the most important thing for you to be happy." She turned around and went to collect her things. A boy was scratching in the back of his mind. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but he could not help it. He wanted to go back to Rita. It seemed that happiness was within his grasp. Finally, Rita was discharged from the hospital. Fedia took her home, and they had dinner together. We watched a movie, and then he went to put Dasha to bed and read her a story. Margarita wore a stunning negligee. She still had the same impeccable chiseled figure. She leaned toward him and tried to kiss him. But Fedia suddenly pushed her away sharply. He realized that he felt nothing more for her, only flattery and falsehood, with which she was saturated, and said, "You're sorry, Rita, but I can't. I made a terrible mistake, thinking that we can still work out. I just realized how much I miss my Anechka. I will help you. I will take my daughter on weekends and vacations, and if you want, she can stay with me and Anya, but I will not live with you." And the man rushed out of the house. At that time, Anyuta was sobbing in her room in the communal apartment. She wanted to howl and climb the wall. She decided that there was nothing left to live for, nothing was keeping her in this world. With trembling hands, she squeezed indiscriminately pills on the table, getting ready to commit a terrible and reckless act. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. "Anyuta, open up, I know you're home. Forgive me, I was mistaken. I love you, you hear, I love you." The girl burst into tears of happiness. Finally, she had waited for the most important words of her life. Anya opened the door, and Feder embraced her and whispered, "Duraka, what are you up to? What if I hadn't had time? Forgive me, I am terribly sorry. I did not notice, did not appreciate your care, all cherished in the soul of a long-dead feeling for Rita. I promise, from now on I will take care of you and carry you in my arms." He spun her around the room, afraid to open his arms. Fedia did a DNA test, confirmed his paternity and restored his rights to his daughter. Margarita was not at all upset, on the contrary, she was even happy about it. Gave her daughter to him, and Anya, with a light heart, and without a shadow of suffering, and left for abroad with her new boyfriend. The girl quickly became attached to Anya, because she surrounded her with sincere love and warmth. The three of them walked, played, drew. The child was delighted, because Rita was always not before her, the little girl, or stayed with the nurse, or even with other people's stepfathers, so rarely did he think of her. Anyuta loved in the evenings combing long braids girl, making her intricate hairstyles, and whispered, "My little mermaid." 6 months later, Anyuta felt bad, she felt dizzy, the sight of food turned inside out. All the time she wanted pickles and tangerines. Unbelieving her happiness, she went to the doctor on stiff legs. The doctor examined her, deeply read her chart and shook her head. Anya's soul went to her heels, but the doctor smiled, turned to her and said, "I congratulate you. With your diagnosis, it is incredible. But you are pregnant. You can't call it anything else but a miracle." Anya burst into tears of joy. She had waited so many years to hear these words. In due time, a delightful toddler boy, Bogdan, was born. The family was happy. Dasha happily nursed her little brother, and proudly wheeled the stroller down the street, adjusted the blanket and entertained him with rattles. 10 years later, a tired, shabby woman in dark glasses with a suitcase in her hands rang the doorbell. Dasha shouted, "I'll get it," and ran to the door. The girl looked at the woman and asked, frowning, "Who do you want?" Rita snarled indignantly, "I'm actually your mother. Do not you recognize me, my daughter? Will you let me in? My mother Anya is at home right now, in the kitchen, cooking dinner for us, and I'm helping her. And you go away, don't interfere in our life. I'm fine with Daddy and Anya. They love me for real. Why did you come?" And the girl closed the door. Rita went downstairs, sat down on the bench, and wept bitterly. Only now it dawned on her how carelessly she had lived. She had chased after money and luxury, but she had lost her family and daughter. Feder asked his daughter, "So, who came, Dasha?" The girl answered calmly and confidently, "Well, we've got the wrong address, let's go to lunch," and hugged her father tightly. Thank you for your watching. See you next time.